In a small, quiet town nestled between rolling hills and thick forests, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The streets were mostly empty, save for the occasional flicker of light from a window or the soft hum of a passing car. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, where secrets were whispered behind closed doors, and where even the smallest of disruptions could ripple like a stone tossed into a still pond. At the heart of this town stood a modest police station, its facade worn and its sign creaking gently in the evening breeze. Inside, the atmosphere was calm, the low hum of a desk fan breaking the silence as Officer Daniels sat at his desk, sipping lukewarm coffee and flipping through a stack of paperwork. It was a routine evening, one he had come to expect in a town where not much happened, until the soft creak of the front door drew his attention. Standing in the doorway was a little girl, no older than 8, clutching a worn teddy bear in her small hands. Her oversized sweater hung loosely on her frame, and her shoes were scuffed, as if they'd walked many miles. She hesitated, her wide, curious eyes darting around the room before landing on Officer Daniels. There was something about her that immediately struck him, a mixture of vulnerability and quiet determination. "Hello there," Daniels said gently, setting his coffee down and leaning forward. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" The girl shook her head, stepping cautiously into the room. Her voice was soft but unwavering as she said, "My stepmother makes me work a lot. I don't think it's fair." Daniel's heart sank at the words, and he motioned for her to come closer. "What's your name, kiddo?" "Anna," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced around nervously, as if afraid someone might burst through the door at any moment. I don't know who else to tell, but I can't do it anymore." The air in the room seemed to shift. Daniels could feel the weight of her words settling in, and he knew this was no ordinary visit. "Why don't you sit down and tell me everything, Anna?" he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Anna hesitated, clutching the teddy bear tighter, but eventually nodded and climbed into the chair. Her feet barely touched the floor, and she swung them nervously as she began to speak. "Ever since my dad married her, things have been hard. She doesn't like me much. She makes me clean everything, cook too, even when I'm tired." Her voice wavered, but she pressed on. "She says I'm not allowed to play or go outside unless everything's perfect. And it's never perfect enough for her." Daniels listened intently, his mind racing. This was more than a child's complaint. There was something deeper here. "Does your dad know about this?" he asked carefully. Anna shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "He's always busy. He travels a lot for work, and when he's home, she's always nice to me in front of him. But when he's gone," her voice trailed off, and she stared down at her teddy bear, running her fingers over its frayed ear. Daniels leaned back in his chair, his brows furrowed. He'd heard stories like this before, but they never got easier. "Anna, I'm really glad you came here to tell me this. It's very brave of you," he said, trying to reassure her. "Can you tell me a bit more about what happens when your dad's not home?" Hannah hesitated, glancing toward the door as if expecting her stepmother to appear. Then, in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, she began to share snippets of her life. She spoke of endless chores, of being scolded for the smallest mistakes, of long nights spent scrubbing floors while her stepmother watched television. She spoke of meals eaten in silence, of a room so small it barely fit her bed, and of a longing for the carefree days she could barely remember. As Anna spoke, Daniels felt a mix of anger and sorrow. He knew he had to tread carefully, not wanting to scare her or make promises he couldn't keep. "Anna, do you feel safe at home right now?" he asked gently. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked up at him. her big, tear-filled eyes searching his face for something. Reassurance, maybe, or the promise that things could get better. Finally, she shook her head. Daniels took a deep breath, his mind already piecing together a plan. But before he could say anything, the door to the station creaked open again, and a shadow fell across the room. Anna froze, her eyes widening in fear as she clutched her teddy bear tightly. Daniels turned toward the door, his hand instinctively moving toward the radio on his desk. "Anna," a sharp voice called out, cutting through the tension like a knife. The little girl shrank back in her chair, her knuckles white as she gripped the bear. Daniels rose slowly, placing himself between Anna and the newcomer. His heart pounded as he prepared to confront whoever had just walked in, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. And just like that, the calm of the evening shattered, leaving the story teetering on the edge of something much bigger than either of them could have anticipated. The sharp voice echoed in the small police station, causing Anna to shrink even further into the chair. Her stepmother stood in the doorway, her presence casting a long, dark shadow across the room. Her sharp features were set in a mixture of irritation and disbelief, and her eyes darted between Anna and Officer Daniels. "There you are," the woman said, her tone icy as she stepped forward. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in?" Daniels held up a hand, his calm demeanor masking the growing tension inside him. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Daniels. Anna came here on her own. She's been sharing some things with me that are concerning." The stepmother's expression shifted quickly, her face softening as she forced a strained smile. "Oh, officer, I'm sure this is all just a misunderstanding. Anna's got such an active imagination. Kids, you know how they are." She laughed nervously, but the sound didn't reach her eyes. "Come on, Anna, let's go home." Anna didn't move. She clutched the teddy bear like it was her lifeline and looked at Daniels with pleading eyes. "I don't want to go," she whispered. The room fell silent for a moment, the air thick with unspoken tension. Daniels stepped closer to the stepmother, his voice firm but measured. "Anna has raised some serious concerns, ma'am. I need to ask you a few questions before anyone goes anywhere." The woman's smile faltered, and a flicker of anger crossed her face. "I don't know what she's been telling you, but I'm her guardian. This is a family matter, and I don't think it's any of your business." Daniels didn't flinch. He'd seen this type of deflection before, and he wasn't about to let it slide. "When a child comes into my station and says they're being mistreated, it becomes my business. Why don't you take a seat, and we can have a calm conversation about what's going on?" The stepmother hesitated, her eyes narrowing as she weighed her options. Finally, she huffed and sat down in one of the chairs by the wall, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. Daniels returned to his desk, careful to keep Anna in his line of sight. "Anna says she's been doing a lot of work at home, cleaning, cooking, and other chores. She also says she hasn't been able to play or rest much. Is that true?" Daniels asked, keeping his tone neutral. "She's exaggerating," the stepmother snapped. "Of course she has chores. Every child does. It's called responsibility." Daniels nodded slowly. "I understand that, but there's a difference between teaching responsibility and overburdening a child. Anna's still young. She needs time to play, to relax, to be a kid." The stepmother's face reddened, and she leaned forward in her chair. "I do everything for her. I put food on the table, I keep a roof over her head, and this is how she repays me. Running off and telling lies to the police." Anna flinched at the harsh words, her small frame trembling. Daniels noticed and shifted his focus back to her. "Anna, is there anything else you'd like to share? It's okay, you're safe here." Anna hesitated, her voice barely audible as she spoke. She gets mad when I don't do things fast enough. Sometimes she yells, and sometimes she grabs my arm really hard. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he kept his expression calm. He turned back to the stepmother. "Do you want to explain that, ma'am?" The stepmother's composure cracked, and her voice grew defensive. "I might lose my temper sometimes, but I'd never hurt her. She's just trying to make me look bad because she doesn't like following rules." Daniels could feel the heat rising in the room. He knew he needed to handle this delicately, but the more the stepmother spoke, the clearer the situation became. He leaned forward, his tone steady. "I'm going to make a call to Child Protective Services. They'll help us figure out what's best for Anna. In the meantime, she'll stay here at the station." The stepmother shot to her feet. "You can't do that. She's my responsibility." Daniel stood as well, his calm authority unshaken. "I can and I will. Anna deserves to feel safe, and right now she doesn't." The stepmother glared at him, her hands clenched into fists. For a moment, it looked like she might argue further, but then she turned and stormed out of the station, slamming the door behind her. The sound echoed through the room, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Daniels turned to Anna, who was still gripping her teddy bear tightly. He crouched down to her level and offered her a reassuring smile. "You did the right thing coming here, Anna. We're going to make sure everything gets better, okay?" Anna nodded slowly, her eyes still filled with uncertainty. Daniels could see the weight of her young life etched into her face, and he knew this was only the beginning of a long road ahead. But for the first time in a long time, Anna had someone in her corner, and that was a start. Anna sat quietly in the corner of the station, her fingers brushing over the worn fur of her teddy bear as Officer Daniels made a call to Child Protective Services. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, filling the otherwise silent room with a low hum. Daniels glanced over at Anna as he spoke, his voice calm and measured, explaining the situation in detail. When he hung up, he crouched down beside her again, keeping his voice gentle. "Anna, someone from CPS is on their way. They're going to talk to you and make sure you have everything you need. For now, you're safe here with me, okay?" Anna nodded slowly, her big eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope. She wanted to believe him, but a small part of her worried about what would happen next. Would her stepmother come back? Would she get in trouble for speaking out? The weight of those questions pressed heavily on her tiny shoulders. A short while later, a kind-looking woman with a warm smile entered the station. Her name was Mrs. Turner, and she introduced herself as a social worker. She knelt down to Anna's level, speaking softly and asking gentle questions about her life at home. Anna hesitated at first, but soon found herself opening up, sharing details about the long days of work, the harsh words, and the quiet loneliness that filled her world. Mrs. Turner listened intently, nodding and jotting notes as Anna spoke. Officer Daniels watched from a distance, his heart heavy. He had seen situations like this before, but each one felt just as important as the last. This little girl deserved a chance to be happy, to feel safe, to have a childhood. He made a silent promise to do everything in his power to ensure that happened. As the evening wore on, Mrs. Turner explained the next steps to Anna. "You're going to come with me tonight, sweetheart. We have a nice family who can take care of you while we figure things out. You'll have your own room, and you won't have to worry about chores or anything like that." Anna's eyes widened. "Really, my own room?" Her voice was filled with a mix of disbelief and wonder. "Really," Mrs. Turner said with a warm smile. "And there'll be other kids there, too, if you feel like making new friends." For the first time in what felt like forever, Anna allowed herself to smile, just a little. She glanced at Officer Daniels, who gave her an encouraging nod. "You're going to be okay, Anna," he said. "You're a brave girl, and you deserve to be happy." As they prepared to leave, the station door swung open again, and Anna froze. Her stepmother stood in the doorway, her face flushed with anger. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice rising. "You can't just take her away from me." Mrs. Turner stepped forward, her tone firm but professional. "Ma'am, we've received a report of potential neglect and mistreatment. Until we can investigate further, Anna will be placed in temporary care. I'll need you to cooperate fully during this process." The stepmother's face twisted with rage, but she seemed to realize that arguing wouldn't help. Over the following weeks, Anna began to settle into her new life. Her temporary foster family welcomed her with open arms, giving her the space and support she needed to heal. She discovered the joy of playing outside, of reading books before bed, and of hearing kind words spoken without anger. Eventually, her father was contacted, and when he learned the full extent of what had happened in his absence, he was heartbroken. He vowed to be more present in Anna's life, to make up for the time he had lost. With the help of counseling and support, their relationship began to mend. As for Anna's stepmother, the investigation revealed a pattern of neglect that couldn't be ignored. She faced consequences for her actions and was no longer allowed to care for Anna. Months later, on a sunny afternoon, Anna sat in a park, watching other children play while her father sat beside her on the bench. She smiled, her teddy bear still tucked under her arm. Life wasn't perfect, but it was better, brighter. For the first time in a long time, Anna felt like she could finally breathe, like she could finally just be a kid. And that was more than enough.